The first time Evelyn's elbow connected with my coffee cup at the top of the Nexus stairwell, I had three things in my hands: a large dark roast from the cafe downstairs, my laptop bag, and approximately zero dignity by the time it was over. I should back up. I'm Aiden Sayers, 29, software developer at Nexus Analytics, a tech startup in Vancouver's Mount Pleasant neighborhood. We built data infrastructure tools for mid-sized companies, the kind of work that sounds impressive at dinner parties and completely blanks people's eyes after about 20 seconds of explanation. I'd been at Nexus 2.5 years, long enough to know which floor's microwave smelled like something had died inside it, third floor, without question, where the good chargers were hidden, and that the stairwell between the second and third floors had a blind corner you really should slow down for. I did not slow down that morning. Evelyn did not slow down either. She came around that corner carrying a stack of printed wireframe mock-ups, a portable monitor tucked under one arm, and the expression of someone who had already made 5 decisions before 8 a.m. and was unhappy with most of them. I had dark roast, forward momentum, and no chance. The collision happened in half a second. What I remember most clearly is the paper going everywhere. White sheets catching air like startled birds, and my arm moving before my brain had formally agreed to it, catching Evelyn around the shoulders before she could pitch sideways into the handrail. My coffee somehow survived. Her documents did not. We stood there for a moment, me with one arm around her and the cup held at a careful angle, her hands gripping my jacket sleeve, both of us catching our breath. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and recycled air, and distantly, third-floor microwave. Then she looked up at me, completely composed, and said, "Okay, you can let go now, or don't. I'm open to either outcome." I let go, stepped back, and spent the next 30 seconds collecting wireframes while trying to remember if this was the part where I apologized or the part where I kept apologizing until it got strange. "I'm sorry," I started. "You caught me," she said. She was already crouching to gather pages, stacking them with the efficiency of someone who did not have time for disorder. Nobody's apologizing for that. I might have caused the needing to be caught part. 50-50, she said, and straightened, and handed me back my own pen, which had apparently fallen from my chest pocket without my knowing. Her eyes were dark and very direct. "Evelyn." "Aiden." "I know." She tucked the monitor back under her arm. "You fixed the Salesforce integration last month. Reese in Ops has been telling people about it like you invented sliced bread." I had no idea Reese had been telling people anything. "The bread thing is generous," I said. "It was mostly just patience and a lot of coffee." She glanced at the cup still in my hand. "And some athletic reflexes, apparently." Then she continued down the stairs. Printouts gathered, monitors secure, like the laws of physics were more of a rough guideline for people with her level of focus. I stood alone in the stairwell long enough that it became strange. Then I went to my desk and thought very hard about something else. My name is Aiden Sayers, 29, developer, Vancouver-born, which people assume means I'm calm and apologetic, and honestly, they're not wrong. I alphabetized the apps on my phone. I had a 7-step morning routine. I called my mom on Sundays. For about 3 years before I came to Nexus, I'd been in what I thought was a serious relationship with a woman named Vanessa. Shared an apartment near Commercial Drive, had a section of the closet, the whole thing. When she ended it, she didn't say anything cruel. She just said she needed someone who made her feel something she couldn't predict. "You're so steady, Aiden," she said, like steady was a diagnosis. After that, I put steady to use. Work, gym, Sunday calls, the occasional Canucks game with my brother. No drama, no uncertainty. I had decided to be very careful about who I let matter to me, which mostly meant staying inside the lines at work and not spending too much time thinking about the UX designer on the 3rd floor, who collected mechanical pencils and had a succulent on her desk she'd named Basil, which she claimed was ironic because it never needed watering. I named rules because rules were something I could keep track of. Rule 1. No feelings for a coworker. Rule 2. Do not break Rule 1. Rule 3. If Evelyn says something interesting in a meeting, write it in your notes and move on. The notes were getting very long. Evelyn Brandt worked in UX design. She was 27, sharp in the way that some people are quietly sharp. She didn't cut you by accident. She just happened to be precise. She wore her hair in different arrangements depending on her mood, which I noticed because I paid attention and told myself was just general environmental awareness. She had a mug that said, "Not a morning person, not an afternoon person," working on it that she guarded with the fervor of someone protecting a natural resource. She presented to clients like she was doing them a favor by explaining the obvious, which somehow made them love her. When Reese and Ops had tried to water basil without asking, she'd sent a 7-sentence email about plant boundaries that Reese still quoted admiringly. I knew too many things about Evelyn. I was keeping it structured. Then came the Pemberton pitch. Pemberton Group was a BC-based property development firm, considering Nexus's analytics platform potentially the largest client we'd signed in 3 years. Our director, Annika, had the kind of controlled energy that suggested she'd survived previous impossible deadlines by sheer precision of will. On a Tuesday afternoon in October, she appeared in the open office and said Pemberton had moved the decision timeline up by 48 hours. Their CEO was in Vancouver for 1 day only. If we wanted the contract, we had 1 night to prepare a revised data demo and proposal. The room went quiet. Then Evelyn said, "Which room are we using?" Annika looked at her. "You're volunteering." "I know the friction points in the current demo. I've been watching test users stumble over the same 2 screens for 3 weeks." Evelyn glanced across the office. Toward me. I immediately looked at my monitor. "And Aiden knows the integration stack better than anyone. We can rebuild the demo logic overnight if we have the access we need." I looked up. She was watching me, not asking, assessing. "We can do it," I said. Annika gave us the small boardroom on the 2nd floor, 2 company cards for food delivery, and the instruction to send her the final demo by 7 a.m. Reese, passing by with his backpack, mouthed something at me as I gathered my laptop. It looked like "Don't be weird." I mouthed back, too late. By 6:30, the office had emptied. The building's windows faced east toward the Cascades, invisible in the October dark, and the 2nd floor boardroom smelled like dry erase markers and the Thai food we'd ordered from a place on Main Street. We sat across a low table with laptops open, a digital whiteboard, and a growing collection of sticky notes. I had not expected working with Evelyn to feel like this. She was direct in a way that saved time. When something didn't work, she said so. When something almost worked, she'd tap her pencil twice. I learned this quickly and say no but closer, and then explain exactly why. She didn't defer to me because I was the developer. She challenged every assumption and then built something better from the rubble. It was maybe the most efficient 2 hours of my professional life, and also making it very hard to remember the rules. Around 8, we stopped for food. I sat on one side of the table with my pad CU. She sat on the floor below the whiteboard with her container of curry. "How long have you been at Nexus?" she asked. 2.5 years, you? 14 months. She speared a piece of potato. "It's a good team. Reese tells everyone everything, but he's genuinely kind, so I forgive it." "He told the whole ops floor about the Salesforce integration," I said. "He told me you were quiet but very reliable." In that order, like they were related. She looked at me steadily. "Are they?" I thought about it. "I'm not sure reliable's a compliment in your sentence." I didn't mean it that way. Her voice was matter of fact. I meant that most people are one or the other. Before I could answer, her phone lit up on the table. She glanced down. Something shifted in her face, small but definite, the way a window changes when a cloud moves across it. She turned the screen over. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine." She picked up her fork again. I let it go. We went back to the demo, but I'd caught the name on the notification in the split second before she flipped it. Mum. And I'd caught, underneath the word fine, the half second it took her to arrange herself back into the version of herself she showed the rest of the room. She brought it up herself, later, when we were testing the final data flow and rain had started against the windows. "Can I ask you something completely unprofessional?" she said. I saved my progress first. Depends on the question. My grandmother turns 80 on Saturday. Big family dinner. My parents are hosting. My aunts are flying in from Edmonton, the whole thing. She paused. My mother has been asking since August whether I'm bringing anyone. I keep saying I'm still seeing if schedules line up. I've run out of schedules. I looked at her carefully. So you need someone who won't make it weird, she said. Someone who can hold a conversation with my aunt about whether sourdough is still worth the effort, and fake interest in my cousin's new Subaru Outback. And, she stopped, and probably deal with my mother, asking pointed questions in a very polished tone. What kind of questions? She looked down at her laptop. The kind that are technically about me, but are actually about her idea of what I should be by now. That landed quietly. I understood what it meant to have someone tell you, kindly, face completely composed, that you were somehow not quite enough. Why me? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, because you've been sitting across this table for 3 hours calling out my weak assumptions without making me feel stupid for having them. That's not as common as it should be. There was a responsible answer here. Something about professional limits and complexity and how things could become difficult. Saturday, I said. What time? Her shoulders came down by about half an inch. 6. Text me the address. She smiled. It was careful, and then it wasn't. I'm going to need you to pretend we've been dating for at least 3 months. My mother notices recent. How recent? Last Thursday is too recent. Last Thursday I fixed a kernel memory leak. I can definitely pretend that was a date. She laughed, quick, unguarded. Then she peeled a sticky note, wrote something, and pressed it to the lid of my laptop. It said, "Thank you. Also, the kernel thing sounds like the worst date imaginable." I left it there for 3 days. The demo went well. Better than well. Annika forwarded us Pemberton's written response that afternoon, which included the phrase exactly the kind of analytical clarity we've been looking for. Annika appeared at my desk to say, "Good work," in the tone of someone who did not say it easily. Reese materialized from somewhere. She smiled, he whispered, with teeth. Saturday. Evelyn's parents lived in Kerrisdale, one of Vancouver's quieter older neighborhoods, where the houses had good bones and the gardens were tended with the kind of regularity that meant someone cared. Her mother, Frances, opened the door in a silk blouse and the expression of a woman who had prepared several opinions in advance. "Aiden," she said, "Evelyn mentioned you yesterday." "I'm glad she mentioned me at all," I said. Frances's expression recalibrated slightly, modest. Just honest. Evelyn, standing half a step behind her mother, pressed her hand briefly to the inside of my elbow. 2 fingers. I felt it through my jacket sleeve. Her father, Douglas, shook my hand with genuine warmth, the handshake of a man who had spent decades teaching high school and genuinely liked people. Her grandmother, Nana Bet, seized my wrist and told me I looked like someone who knew how to listen, which was apparently how she assessed character. Evelyn's cousin showed me a photo of his new Outback. I asked 3 questions about the cargo space. He was satisfied. The dinner was roast lamb with potatoes and a salad no one touched and conversation that moved like river rapids. Stretches of easy, then sudden drops. "Evelyn's been working very long hours," Frances said, about 20 minutes in, directing it toward the table and me specifically. "She looks tired." Evelyn's fork paused over her plate. "We've all been heads down on a big pitch," I said. "Evelyn's work was the reason it landed." "That's kind." Frances smiled, light and controlled. "I only mean she ought to find some balance. Intensity is," she waved her hand, "sustainable only to a point." "I think intensity's what makes her good at what she does," I said. I kept my voice easy. "It's not a liability." Frances looked at me, then at Evelyn, then back at her lamb. Under the table, Evelyn's foot pressed briefly against mine. I didn't look at her. I ate my potatoes. After Douglas's short speech about his retirement, 31 years teaching, and when he thanked his family, Evelyn stared at her water glass with the fixed attention of someone not wanting anyone to see their expression. We moved toward dessert. In the kitchen, gathering coffee cups, I found Evelyn leaning against the counter, with her eyes closed. "Hey," I said quietly. "Give me a second." She breathed out. She does that thing where the concern is technically about me, but actually about her image. I know this, I've known this for years, and somehow she says I look tired, and I'm suddenly 17 again. She opened her eyes. They were bright in a way that meant she was holding something in. I negotiate with people for a living. I've handled clients who made Frances look like a greeting card. I set the coffee cups down and didn't say you're fine, because she wasn't asking to be fine, she was asking to be heard. You know what I see? I said. Someone who rebuilt a client presentation from scratch overnight, made it work, made the client say yes, and is now standing in her parents' kitchen, calmly processing something difficult instead of making it anyone else's problem. She was quiet. That's not being too intense, I said. That's just being you. Evelyn looked at me for a long moment, and something in her face opened up, like a window nobody had thought to open in a while, because they'd forgotten that kind of light was available. You keep saying things that make me want to believe them, she said. I only say things I mean. She looked at my tie, a deep green, which my mum had given me 2 Christmases ago and which I'd put on with the specific thought that it was the kind of thing someone might wear to meet someone's parents without quite admitting that's what they were doing. She reached up and adjusted the knot, which did not need adjusting. Her fingers were still at my collar when she said quietly, "Somewhere between the demo and the dinner table, I stopped pretending this was a favor. My heart did something irregular. I stopped during the demo," I admitted. When, exactly? When you said no, but closer to my second integration draft, and then fixed it in 20 minutes and didn't make it a thing. Her mouth curved, just slightly. That's very on brand for you. Meaning? Meaning you noticed the specifics. The November rain started against the kitchen window. The murmur of the party continued in the other room. Then she said, "Aiden." Yeah. I'm going to do something that is probably inadvisable, given that we work together. Define inadvisable. She kissed me, not like a question, like a decision. I kissed her back, like I'd been thinking about it longer than I was willing to admit, which was, accurately, several months. When we stepped apart, her cheeks were warm. That changes things, she said. Same thing as helping, I said, in this context. She laughed, low and real, and picked up the coffee cups, and we walked back into the dinner like two people who had just made a decision that would require some planning and possibly an HR conversation, and were choosing to be fine with that. By the following Wednesday, the planning had not yet happened. What had happened was that Nexus sent an all-staff email about an acquisition. Hargreave Tech, a mid-size analytics firm out of Calgary, was in advanced discussions to acquire Nexus. The email, written in the careful language of exciting opportunity and strategic alignment, included a note that role assessments would follow to identify potential redundancies. The office had the atmosphere of a room where someone has announced the weather might be a problem, but can't say how much of a problem specifically or for whom. Reese appeared at my desk within minutes. They've got their own dev team, he said, and their own UX team. I said nothing. I'm not trying to stress you out, he added, and then clearly realized he had already stressed me out and left. That afternoon, Evelyn sent me a message. Can we talk? We met in the stairwell, the same one, the blind corner. The place where the whole thing had started with a collision and a stack of wireframes and a line I'd been turning over ever since. Are you worried? She asked. About the acquisition? About us, because of the acquisition. I leaned against the wall. Outside the small window, the North Shore Mountains were invisible in cloud. I'd be lying if I said the timing wasn't complicated. It is complicated, she said, direct about it, which I appreciated. We're both potentially flagged as redundant. If one of us loses their job, the dynamic changes. If we're both kept on, we have to navigate it properly. HR conversation. Yeah. I looked at her. Are you talking yourself out of it? She was quiet. I'm trying to figure out if the complication is a reason or an excuse. That deserved an honest answer. 3 weeks ago, I would have used it as a reason, I said. Because I've been using things as reasons for a while now. I thought about Vanessa and the word steady delivered like a consolation prize. Someone once told me I was too predictable to be interesting. I believed it for a long time. The safe choices started to feel like evidence. Evelyn watched me. You're not predictable, she said. You're precise. Those aren't the same thing. I looked at her. I know that now. I pushed off the wall. I don't want to use the acquisition as an excuse. I just wanted to be honest that it's there. She nodded slowly. So what do you want to do? I want to take you to that Italian place on Canby that Reese won't stop recommending. I want to see if I'm right about what you'd order. I want to find out what you're like when you're not managing something. A short silence. Okay, she said. Yeah? Yeah, she almost smiled. What do you think I'd order? Something that sounds simple and turns out to be interesting. She actually smiled then, full and unguarded. That's not very precise of you. I'm working with limited data. I'd need a dinner to improve the model. That, she said, is the most developer thing anyone has ever said to me. We told Annika the next morning. Annika listened, asked 2 questions about reporting lines, confirmed we weren't in a direct reporting relationship, and said, keep the work clean and don't create anything I have to document before coffee. Thanks. Riss appeared in the hallway approximately 4 minutes later. I have been waiting for this, he said, since the Salesforce integration. The acquisition took 6 weeks to finalize. Both Evelyn and I kept our roles. Hargreaves' team had gaps that we filled rather than overlaps, and the combined company sent an all clear by mid-December. Reese got promoted, the Pemberton contract renewed, Basil survived a minor overwatering incident, and came back looking, honestly, better for it. We learned each other through December and into the new year. She learned that I kept a handwritten list of things I wanted to fix in the apartment but never actually fixed them. I learned she had 7 playlists on her phone, each named after a feeling rather than a genre. She learned I found Tim Hortons' holiday cups inexplicably cheerful. I learned she had a complicated relationship with her phone notifications, specifically the ones from her mother. Frances, true to form, continued. Small things, a text asking if Evelyn was eating enough, a note after a family call that Evelyn's cousin had finally settled, a question about whether Aiden had plans, meaning financial ones, meaning long-term ones. One evening in February, Evelyn's phone lit up during dinner at my apartment. I saw her jaw go quiet. Read it? I asked. She slid the phone across. Your father mentioned Aiden seems nice. I hope you're not rushing because you feel behind. You've always been so reactive. I set the phone down. I wanted to say several things. I said none of them, because they were mine to feel, not hers to carry. You don't have to answer tonight, I said. If I don't answer tonight, her voice is in my head all night. Then answer what's true, I said, not what smooths it over. She picked up the phone, typed, and read it to me before she sent it. I'm not reacting, Mom. I'm choosing. Those are different things, and I'd really like you to be able to see that. She hit send, put the phone face down. Her hands were still. That's new, she said. Which part? Saying it that way, to her. How'd it feel? She exhaled slowly, like the first time you run a function and it compiles on the first try. I laughed, genuinely, out loud, and she looked pleased in the way she looked when she'd landed exactly the joke she intended. Then she turned her hand over on the table. I covered it with mine. I'm not going anywhere, I said. She looked at me steadily. I know. Spring came late that year, the way it does in Vancouver, gray and indecisive until suddenly it wasn't, and then the cherry blossoms hit every street corner at once and made you feel like the city had been building towards something all along. One Saturday in April, we were at the Granville Island Market, bags of vegetables we were pretending we'd actually cook, sun coming low through the bridge beams in that gold way. And Evelyn was reading jam labels with the same seriousness she brought to design reviews, and I was watching her, and I thought, this is the part of a day I had been waiting for, without knowing I was waiting for it. Evelyn, I said. I love you. She went still. The jam jar stayed in her hands. Then she turned. Her expression did the thing, the open thing, the window light thing, and she said, that's extremely inconvenient. Is it? I had a whole plan. I was going to find a moment that was less. She gestured at the market around us, structurally indecisive. The cherry blossoms are around the corner. We could walk there. She laughed, warm and real and right at me. I love you, Aiden Sayers. I love that you alphabetize things and still manage to surprise me. I pulled her in, right there in the middle of the market, and she let me. 6 months after that, we moved into a place in East Van together. Second floor, exposed brick, a balcony exactly large enough for 2 chairs and a small table, which we bought immediately and used constantly. On the first morning, she was up before me, standing in the middle of the living room in my old university hoodie, holding 2 mugs, surrounded by boxes we hadn't opened yet. She backed up to set my mug on a box behind her, caught her foot on the corner of one, and wobbled. I was across the room before I knew I'd moved. She landed in my arms exactly the way she'd stumbled into them in the Nexus stairwell 16 months ago. Hands on my shoulders, mine at her waist, old muscle memory. Except now there were no papers to save, no witnesses in the hallway, no careful rules pretending to be useful. Just morning light through uncurtained windows, the smell of coffee, and Evelyn looking up at me with the expression I'd spent months trying to file under something that didn't matter. And eventually had to stop pretending I could. Okay, she said softly, you can let go now. I pulled her closer instead. Or don't, I said. I'm open to either outcome. She kissed me right there in the middle of our messy new living room, and I thought, the careful, steady version of me would have a plan for this, a system, a timeline. I didn't need any of those. I just needed this.